What's up, guys? Welcome to your 91st Android tutorial for the new Boston. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is get rid of that error I showed you in the last tutorial. Or not necessarily an error, but every time we use our browser and we click a link, it's going to open up a new intent. Use the intent to open up some kind of a browser instead of using our WebView like we'd like. And what we need to do is we kind of need to override that intent that's happening. And so what we're going to do is how we're going to set that up is by setting up a WebView client. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to say our browser dot, and then we can say set WebView client, and as you can see it takes a WebView client within its parameters. Now we don't have a WebView client yet, so we're going to create one. So we're going to create a new class. We can either do that over here or down here, down below in the code, which I'm going to do. So whatever you guys feel more comfortable with. But we're going to create a new object, which again is a WebView client. So we're going to say new RView client, something like that. It doesn't really matter what you guys want to label that as. And it's like, hey, we don't know what this is. We're going to say create a class RView client right here. And we're going to say whatever, finish. Dang it. I hate how it does that. Never mind. I'm going to do it. Yeah, I might as well just do it in this new code over here. So again, basically all we're doing is we created a new class that is going to be a WebView client. So we're going to just create a new object of the WebView class that we just created, and then I just hovered over and said create a class, which created this class for me. And as you can see, the most important thing is it extends the WebView client class. So that's going to allow us to, again, since our set WebView client is looking for that, we need to say extends WebView client as well. So now what we want this class to do is we're basically going to make a Boolean, a true false, but we're going to override because it's coming from something else. So we just have to override that method. I know we haven't really got into what override means, but it's kind of a Java thing. Don't worry too much about it. We're just going to say public Boolean and then say should override URL loading. And this is going to be a web service, or I'm sorry, a web view called V, and we're going to call this, or the second parameter is going to be a string called URL. And this, or we're going to have to import a WebView. So you're like, what's going on here? Basically this is just a method that we need to set up, and it's going to say which view we want to override and basically which URL, or when we use the load URL method on our WebView from the previous class, it's going to go through this whole thing right here. So we're going to need the WebView, which WebView we're dealing with, and which URL it's trying to load. So that's basically what that method's doing right there. And then what we're going to say is we're going to say view, or V, for a WebView that's being passed in right here. And then we're just going to say load URL, the same method, and then we're going to say URL as well. So basically that's the method that we're kind of setting up. And it's still giving us an error because it's Boolean. It's looking for a true false statement, and so we're just going to say return true. So I don't know if that's kind of confusing. Let's run it and make sure it works, and I'm going to kind of talk over everything that we did again, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. Or as that's loading, I'll just talk over that again. Okay, again, Android will use an intent that uses its own browser to open up links of some sort. So we want to override that. So how we're going to do that is using the set WebView client, and then we don't have a WebView client yet, so we're going to say create our own, a new instance of this class that we just created. So we had to create that class, so it created it for us, and it extended the WebView client, which is what we're looking for. And then we created this method called should override URL loading, which takes in a WebView and a URL. So we take that WebView and we use the load URL method, and then basically we're just setting that to true, so it's going to load on our web view, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does, but it might not. And sorry if it doesn't. So let's try and click like blog here, and hopefully it'll load now within here. As you can see, the blog section is loading in here. The next, and then just make sure tutorial section right here as well. So yeah, it looks like it's working. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of scale down this browser to fit in this window. So as you can see right now, it's zoomed in. We don't really want it to start zoomed in like this. So we're going to scale it down. I'm going to show you some other settings that we can use with the WebView class. And I'll catch you guys then. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 90-second Android tutorial for the new Boston. And what we're going to do in this tutorial, we're basically going to use some of the WebView settings to achieve some more desired results that we want to get. For example, one that we were going to achieve through the settings is kind of, whoa, everything's freaking out here. We're going to kind of zoom out and make it match the width here. And then another thing that we're going to do is we're going to enable JavaScript. So if we use right now example www.youtube.com, and we go, YouTube uses JavaScript. So right now it says please enable JavaScript on your browser. So that's what we're going to kind of achieve in this tutorial with the settings. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into our onCreate method here where we have our WebView set up, and just right before we load our URL, or I guess you can do it after that or before that as well. This is where we're going to use our settings. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to enable that JavaScript. So what we're going to do, we're going to say our brow for our web view, and then we're going to say get settings. And we can do a lot of things with these settings. I'm just going to show you a few here, such as enabling JavaScript. So we're going to say set JavaScript enabled, and then that's true or false. So it's as simple as this, true. Now we can load websites like YouTube, etc., websites that use JavaScript. And that's how you do it. You get the settings of the web view, and then you set something like JavaScript. Simple codes and methods as well. But now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of define, again, zooming out and setting up our website to be zoomed out for the most part. So again, we're just going to say our brow, then we're going to say get settings. Oops. And the first one that we're going to use the load with overview mode. So we're going to say set load with overview mode, and the documentation doesn't really tell us that much, so I'll elaborate on what this means here in a second. So that's the first thing that we need to do, and then we're going to also say our brow, and then we're also going to get the settings. Oops. And then we're going to say dot, and we're going to say set set use wide viewport, and again that's true or false. We're going to set that to true as well. So now we kind of use some of the settings to achieve some of the methods that we want to do. One other thing that you guys probably should do anytime you use this load URL method, I know it's kind of out of order here, but we probably want to do like a try and catch. So we're just going to set that up real quick, and catch, and then exception E, and then just E dot print stack trace. Because again, it might not always be able to load, so it's nice to surround that with a try and catch, which we kind of talked about in the past as well. Alright, so now let's talk about these two methods, the set load with overview mode and the set use wide viewport mode. Basically what this set load with overview mode, it's kind of hard to read sometimes without spaces for some reason. I don't know why. But basically what that is it's going to say if we want it completely zoomed out or not. So we want that to be true. And then what this one does is basically that's going to allow us to kind of set up a normal viewport, such as like a normal desktop browser for the most part. So we want that to be true as well, instead of if we set it to false, it'd be constrained to its own dimensions for the most part. So I don't know if that made too much sense, but again, that's kind of what those things mean, because you know, the manifest, or I'm sorry, the Java doc doesn't really describe them too well. But let's just run our application, make sure everything works, and that's pretty much it for this tutorial, guys. Alright, so let's open this up, and hopefully it will be zoomed out when it loads the My Bring Back site. And as you can see, it is zoomed out. So that's nice. And it's not really constrained to anything, so that's good as well. And then let's check out the website to make sure the JavaScript is enabled. So we're going to say http www.youtube.com, and we're going to go and now it loads. So it's looking pretty good, guys. This is probably the end with the WebView stuff for now anyways. I'm probably done with it, so I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Peace. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 93rd Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial, I just thought this would be a good way to show you guys, because it might be something that you need to do. Basically, I'm going to show you how to hide the keyboard in code. Since, for example, if we start a browser application, we do HTTP, or actually if we click on our edit text, our keyboard comes up, and then we do HTTP, you know, www.thenewboston.com, and then we hit go. Our keyboard's still there. It's just like chilling. He's like, hey guys, what's up? Just hanging out here, and it doesn't go away. So in this tutorial, we're just going to close our keyboard after we hit the go button and after it loads our website. So it's going to be a pretty simple tutorial for the most part. It's just another one of those things that seems kind of complex. It's kind of hard to remember, but that's why we're creating this project here. So again, you guys can refer to it in your own code. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down into our switching case for our go button, and after we've loaded our website, we want to get rid of our browser. So we do that through input method manager. So we're going to set up an input method manager, and basically this class kind of manages the input. So that's what that does. And then we're going to call this our input method manager, IMM, something like that. We're going to import this, and what we're going to set this equal to is we're going to cast in the input method manager, and then we're going to say get system service, and what service do we want to get? Well, we want to refer to the context, and then we're going to say dot input method service. So that's a service that we're using, and basically there we go. Now we've set up our manager. This input method manager is going to be set up from some sort of a input method service, and now what we have to do is we kind of have to use one of the methods from this manager that we set up. So we could have created this within our own create method and have this variable you know, be able to be used within multiple methods within our class if you want to do that. We don't have to set it up here, but what we're going to do now is use the method that's going to basically hide our keyboard. So again, once we're done typing within our edit text, we hit this go button. It's going to set it to a string, and then we're going to load that URL, and then we're going to want to close the keyboard. So this is how you close the keyboard. We refer to that input method manager, and we say dot hide soft input from window. So basically what that takes in within its parameters is a binder window token and a flag of some sort. So we're going to click that, and for a flag we're going to set this equal to be 0. Let's see if the Java doc has anything. Yeah, just set it to 0 for now. And then what we're going to do is we need that binder. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the edit text that we have in our class that basically is giving us the problem with the keyboard. after we're done using it, done using this edit text, we're gonna say dot get window token. So it basically is going to convert it to this iBinder. So it's going to take our edit text called URL and get the window token from it. And that's how you basically set it up. And this code will hide it, hide our keyboard after we're done using this edit text for the most part. So again, pretty simple. Kind of you're like, what's going on here? But I mean, after you use it a few times, once you need this, or you can always refer back to this project. So I'm just going to put a little comment here saying hiding the keyboard after using an edit text. So again, if you're working on a project, you can be like, oh, these are the 2 lines of code I need, and copy and paste for the most part, and then change your edit text. So I mean, it's pretty simple, little tutorial, only 2 lines of code that we learned, but it's pretty useful as well. So let's just run it, make sure that we get that error out of there, and we're pretty much done with this tutorial. So let's scroll down to our simple browser and then type in a website again, HTTP. And then we hit go, and it should close this keyboard after it starts loading our URL. And there it does it. So that's kind of what we want. And I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 94th Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is create a Flipper class. Not like the dolphin, although that would be amazing if we could do that. Basically, we're going to use like a ViewFlipper, and you'll see what that is in this tutorial. So I created a class called Flipper and an XML file called Flipper, which we set the content view to. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go look for this thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to this Transitions tab, and we're going to call this, or drag in this ViewFlipper thing here. So we're going to drag that in. Then we're going to go over to the XML, just kind of format it, and then we're just going to throw in some random crap. So be prepared for that, like a button, text view. Actually, let's just throw in a text view. So we're going to delete our button. Actually, no, we won't. We'll leave it. I'm sorry. Undecisive. So we're going to say Flipper 2 here for a text view, and we're going to say Control Copy and paste another text view. We're going to call this Flipper 3 and Flipper 4. So all we have to do now, since we have our Flipper set up, what we want to do is we just want to put this ending statement outside of whatever we want our Flipper views to do. So we can also set up linear layouts and then set up buttons within a linear layout to make the view look a little bit better. But instead, we're just going to have one class be, or like you can think of it as an activity, somewhat be a button. The next one's a view, text view. Next one's another text view, etc. That's how the Flipper class works. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the code. You're like, what? The code and the XML all in one tutorial? Thank you, finally. Instead of you know, wasting our times here. So now let's create that Flipper thing that we just created. So what we're going to do is we're going to say ViewFlipper, and we're going to call it Flippy. And what we're going to do is just add that reference as always. So and what do we give the ID for Flipper? ViewFlipper 1. So we're just going to stick with the standard, you know, because I don't want to get into Flipper too much here, ViewFlippers, but I just want to show you guys again for what you guys want to use it as. And then what we do is we just set up, basically we can set like an on-touch listener or something to this. So that's what we're going to do, on click listener. type this. So anytime we touch one of the views, or it's going to, you know, trigger the on click. So nothing new there. And basically when we hit this click, we can do some methods, and this is what I want to get into. So we have this flippy thing, and we're gonna use the method on it, and again we have to define our variable above our onCreate method and delete that there. So now we can use flippy down here. So we're going to say flippy, and one of the things that we can do is we can just say show next. So that's going to go into our next. Maybe I will have to break this into two tutorials because I want to show you a few other things that the flipper class can do. But let's just run it as now and make sure it works. But yeah, that's all this tutorial is. Basically, the XML file, when you set up this ViewFlipper, then you set up things within here, it's going to classify each one of those as a different kind of view, and it's just going to flip through them anytime we click on it. So here's our first view. Click on our ViewFlipper, which is up here, and so one thing that we can do is we can make this ViewFlipper fill the whole content, fill parent. I don't know if it's not for the height. Yeah, for the height we want it to fill parent, so that's something we can change. So we can click anywhere on the screen for the most part. But as you can see, it just will flip through all of our flippers and start over. So I mean, it's kind of nice to have for like a flashcard or something, a flashcard application where you just flip through flashcards or something for studying. But again, you guys can set up a linear layout here and then define some stuff within there if you want a view to be a certain way, and then you can just flip through them by this you know, this command show next. So you can create a button up top above your ViewFlipper, and you can click that to go to the next one, etc. So that's basically it for this tutorial. Actually, let's just show you one more, and then we'll be done with this flippy thing. I know it's kind of a waste just to, you know, have one tutorial where we set up both a class and an XML file just for, you know, this. But another thing that we can do, let's say we want like a gallery that we have different pictures in each view. And what we can do is we can say, instead of saying the on-click listener to flip, well, we can do that anyways, but we can also set up a variable, a time variable. So we can say flippy.set flip interval, and it takes milliseconds. So let's just get crazy and say half of a second. So every half of a second, it's going to flip to the next one, or that's the interval. And then what we have to do is we have to say flippy dot start flipping. Flippy start flipping. Dang it. Alright, so that's another kind of thing that we can do. So when we run our application, it's going to set this time variable to be half a second, and then it's just going to start flipping through it. And then every half second it's going to, you know, just go to the next one. So that'd be good for like a photo gallery or something if you guys are creating that. I don't know. So as you can see, it's flipping through every half second. So that's another method that you guys can use. And then also when we click, we can make it go even faster because we have that on-click method. So I don't know. Thought I'd show you the flipper, the flippin' flipper, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 95th Android tutorial for the new Boston. Again with me, Travis. And what we're going to do in this tutorial, or in the next few tutorials, is we're going to work with some data. Saving data to the phone, saving data privately so no one else can access that data, publicly on the SD card, and just basically some primitives that we can save as well. So I'm going to show you different ways that you can save and how to do that. We're going to get into a little bit more depth than what we have worked with previously. And as you can see, I've set up an XML layout called SharedPreferences, and also a class called SharedPrefs. So this is just the XML file here where we have an edit text, a save button, a load button, and then just a text view down here. And what I've done is I've created this class again called SharedPrefs, and we have two variables we want to use throughout all of our class. So we define them above again, our edit text and our text view, called mine shared data and data results. Then within the onCreate method, I just said, set up to our XML file, and also I created this method called setUpVariables, which is right here, which just again adds those references from our XML file, and then I set our save and our load button to have an on-click listener, which is this. So we again implemented on-click listener and did a switching case, set that up. So hopefully you shouldn't be confused with that, because we've done this numerous of times. So again, I was just trying to save some time for you and not type that out. Hopefully you guys, if you guys have been following the series, you should probably be able to do that easily by now in your sleep. So let's get into it. As you can see, this type of data is called shared preferences. That's the way we're going to save our data and receive our data. And we've used shared preferences before when we had our preferences class, where we turn off the music for a splash activity, just stuff like that. But we're going to go into a little bit more depth, and just to clarify, the shared preferences is a way to store private primitive data in like a key value pair, and that was the definition off the Android developer page. So it's basically we're using key and value pairs to save data, and we can just save like strings, stuff simply like that, booleans, different types of variables for the most part. So what we're going to do within our onCreate or our onClick method for our save is we're going to get our edit text and read the text and convert it into a string as always. So we're going to say string, and then we're just going to call this like string data, something like that. And again, we just use our edit text, which we called shared data dot get text, and then to string. So again, nothing new there. And what we've done is we've set up a string variable, and this is the kind of variable that we want to save. And when we're working with this shared preferences type of saving, we need to have some kind of file name. So what we're going to do is we're going to create that file name above our classes right here with our edit text and our text view, and it's going to be a string. So we're going to say string, and we're just going to say prefs, or we're going to say our file name, something like that. And we're just going to set this equal to my data, or my string data, my shared string, something like that, my shared string. And we don't want this file name to change, so what we're going to say is we're going to say static. And basically what static means is it's like, hey, don't try and change this, you jerk. Just keep it the same and everything's going to be cool. So basically this file name will never change. Basically, what's that saying? Or it can't change. And what we're going to say is we're also going to say public, so other activities can access this file name if we need to. So there we go. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to use the shared preferences to save this string that we created down here within our onClick of our save button. So we convert it into a string, and then all we have to do is we got to create a shared preferences basically object where we're going to save this stuff. So we're going to do that within our onCreate method as well. And again, we're going to say shared preferences, and we're going to say shared string, or no, yeah, we're just going to say some data, something like that. And again, we have to import this, and what we're going to do is we're going to say get shared preferences, and then what kind of we're going to access our file name, so we're going to just say file name, and then comma and 0. So let's check out what this get shared preferences is, and it basically says retrieves and hold the content of a preference file name, returning. Let's just get down to the second parameter. So let's just get down to the mode. So basically what the mode says is it's kind of the way that we want to be able to write this. So use 0 or mode private for the default operation, which is what we're going to do. But you can also do mode world readable, so the world can read, and writable to control permissions, and some other options that you can use for that second parameter. But now what we've done is we've set up the shared preferences, and what we're going to do actually is also define this above. So we're just going to copy and paste this above our class, or above our onCreate method, and then we're going to define it down here, some data. And now all we have to do is we can basically use an editor to edit what this file name has within it, because right now it's just loading this file name, which the first time we run this application it's going to have nothing. So we're loading the file name, and now we want to be able to edit it within our save. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 96th Android tutorial for the New Boston. And what we're going to do in this tutorial, sorry by the way for ending that last tutorial abruptly, but it was taking too much time, so I just clipped it kind of where I thought it should be clipped. But what we did in the last tutorial, we basically set up a shared preference type variable or instance of a class. And all we did is we say, we kind of do the initialization where we say get shared preferences from file name, which is our string called my shared preferences. We could have also done, just like my shared preferences here in quotations or something like that, and it would have worked. But what we did is we set up a static variable that won't change, so we're just going to use that. And you'll see that in a lot of examples when you work with data or just examples in general. So what we did is, again, we set up this variable to get the shared preferences of this file name and kind of the default setting, which was 0. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use an editor to kind of edit the information and then save it as well. So we're going to again do that within our save button that we created. And first thing that we have to do is we have to access the editor. So the editor is from the shared preferences class. So we're going to go shared preferences dot, and then you can see some of the things that the shared preferences class has. One of them is an editor, and then we can set up our variable called editor or something like that. This would be the same as just saying, like, let's see here, if we just deleted this and we'd say import, but since, we could import the editor as well, but since we already imported our shared preference class, we can just reference that and then hit dot editor. It's going to be the same type of thing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use this editor to get the settings, for the most part, from our shared preference variable that we set up in the last tutorial. So we're going to say some data, which again is our shared preferences, and we're going to say dot, and then we're going to say edit. So we're basically editing our shared preference variable, and then we're going to save it. So that's basically going to allow us to edit this variable, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say our editor, and then we say dot, and we can use the put methods like put boolean, put int, float, long, but we're saving a string, so we're going to say put string, and within its arguments it's going to take a value or a key and then our value. So our key, we can set this up to equal whatever we want that we're going to reference later. So we're going to say something like our string or shared string, something like that. And then we can reference this later because, again, this is the key, and the actual value is going to be from our edit text that we set up again in our last tutorial. That's basically going to convert whatever our edit text is into a string, and that's what we're actually going to save. So we're going to save our string called string data. So again, basically this is the way that you use shared preferences. It's a key and a value system where we set up a key reference and then we apply a value to that key reference, and then we can kind of use the editor to change things and then save it again. And again, the purpose of the shared preference class is just to save like these type of values, strings, booleans, anything that you'd probably consider as a preference, like our on and off check that we used earlier in the series for the music. So it's kind of just to save a certain value And for this example, we're saving a string. So we're going to put our string in, and then what we need to do is we just need to say our editor, and we just need to finalize it basically. So we're going to say editor.commit. And that's basically going to say, hey, we've changed everything that we need to, and just commit to that, and we're good to go. So basically, what we've done is we've referenced our string preference. I shouldn't highlight that, but a variable, which was a string preference called SumData. And every time we hit save, it's going to create a string for us. From the edit text. It's going to convert it to text, and it's going to get the text and it's going to convert it to a string. And then we use this editor variable to reference our shared preference, and then we're going to say, hey, we want to edit something within there. And then we're going to use that editor variable that we set up here to put in a string, and we label the string shared string, and we labeled the actual value of that shared string as, again, our edit text or whatever was within our edit text. And then we're going to say, yeah, we've made the changes we want to, commit to that and make it happen. So that's basically this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to show you how to load that data that we put in there. So as for now, we're just saving the data. So hopefully that made some sense. I know in the last tutorial it kind of ended abruptly and didn't explain too much, but hopefully that made some sense, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 97th Android tutorial for the new Boston. And in this tutorial, we're going to show you how to load data from a shared preference of some sort. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to kind of say an update method of some sort, because we edited our shared preference within our save button. So we kind of want to make sure that our shared preference instance is updated. So again, we created a shared preference called SumData within our onCreate method, and we're basically going to use this same line of code to update. Because right on our onCreate method, it sets it up for us, and at that moment there's nothing defined really. And now what we're doing is we're saying, hey, yeah, since we made this edit, we're going to update it again and see if there's any changes. So again, we're going to get the shared preferences from our shared preference class or object here, and we're going to load the same file name and the default setting. And now what we want to do is we want to set up a string, because we're going to again get this string that we put in right here within our save button, and we called that string shared string here. So we're going to just set up a string variable called data returned, something like that. And we're going to set this variable equal to our SumData, again our shared preference, and we're this time, instead of saying put string, we're going to get string, because again we're loading the data, and we're going to use the same file name or reference that we used in our last tutorial when we put that string in. So we're going to say shared string. And the second parameter, basically this is what's going to be loaded if we couldn't access this shared string. For example, if we mistype this, we don't have a file name within our shared preference called sharded string. So it's going to give us this default value. So we're going to say something like couldn't load data, something like that. So that's what that second parameter means. Again, all we're doing is we're setting up this string variable to get the string from our shared preferences called shared string. And if we couldn't do that, it's going to say couldn't load data. That's going to be the default return. And now all we have to do is we need to set up our text view that we created called data result to match our shared preference that we just received. So we're going to say data result, or what was it? Data results, and we're going to say dot set text. Again, kind of a review for the set text, but now we're going to set it to this string that we just got. So we're going to say data returned. And there we go. We're pretty much done with this tutorial, but let's quickly talk over everything again. Just make sure you guys know what's going on. So we created a shared preference type variable, and it's going to say get shared preferences, and we're going to say, hey, this is the file name. So again, we set up a a static file name that's never going to change called mySharedString. So that's what that file name means. And it's going to load the kind of the default loader. And once we set that up, we're going to kind of access that to save certain data or certain strings or booleans or whatever type of kind of variables we want to save within here. But again, just kind of clarify. Think of this sum data or a shared preference as a folder. I know I said it's a file name, but think of it as a folder. And then within that folder, we can say stuff like we want to create a string reference or a file called shared string, and we're going to put that in there. So think of the shared preference as a folder, and then we're going to say, hey, we want to edit that folder. So we're going to just refer to that folder and say we want to edit something. And again, we set up this string that's going to kind of convert or edit text into a string, and we're just going to use that editor that we create here because that's where we're going to edit stuff. So we're going to say we want to edit and put in a string variable, and we want the file name to be shared string, and we want that value to be basically our edit text converted into a string, and we want to commit to that. We are pretty solid on that decision. And then our load is, again, we're going to set up our shared preferences, the same file name, so we know we're working with that folder for the most part. And then we're going to say we're going to set up a new string variable, and we're going to get basically the string from that folder called shared preferences. And if we couldn't do that, we're going to say couldn't load the data, and then all we're going to do is convert our text view into basically this string that we set up here. So let's run it and make sure it works real quickly. So we're going to go down to our shared preferences class, and we're going to type something like test1. And we're going to first, let's say we load it before we save it. So we're going to load it, and it's going to say couldn't load data because, again, we haven't set up this value called shared string. We do that once we hit the save button. So we're going to say save, and now it's going to create this file called shared string, and it's going to load the data from our edit text. And now when we hit load, it's going to say test1 because we saved it. Again, we can, even if we aren't just converting an edit text, we're saving some preferences. So if we hit load again, it's going to load test1 because we didn't save this test. Once we save it and load it again, it's going to load the test file there. So again, you guys can create as many files as you want within our folder. Again, think of the shared preferences as a folder. So example, you can set up more strings with different type of references that you can load up later. So hopefully you guys kind of understand now the shared preferences a little bit more clearly than previously in the series when we used it for a preference activity. And again, the shared preferences is just beneficial if you're saving strings, booleans, kind of simple variables, not a whole bunch of data, just kind of preferences, true, false statements, stuff like that. So I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial where we're going to get into some more data stuff and using a class that's different than the shared preferences. So I'll catch you guys then. Have a good one. Oh, hey guys, what's up? Welcome to your 98th Android tutorial for the new Boston. And again, what we're going to do in this tutorial is work with some data, like I said, for the next few tutorials, because it's a pretty crucial thing for most applications. You want to save some files, save some data somewhere, and so I'm going to kind of go through different ways you can do that. Now, what we've worked with is the shared preferences, which is good for key and pair values, or key value pairs for the most part. So if you want to save just a variable, have that variable change and update it, we can do that. Now, another way we can save some data or save some files is again internal storage, which is pretty similar to shared preferences, but I just want to show you guys some more stuff that we can do, and this data will be saved internally in the internal storage. So what's going to happen is if they uninstall our application, it is going to be deleted, this internal storage that we're going to create here, or this file. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set up our class, and don't worry, we don't need to create a new XML layout finally. So we're just going to use the same one that we did from the other class as well. I'm just going to move this up here. get started. And as you can see, I implemented the on-click listener, so it's nothing new there. I have a ton of imports, so you guys don't need to worry about. So what we're going to do within our onCreate method, we're going to set our content view to, what was it, r.layout. Oh man, shared preferences. It's going to be the same layout, same kind of stuff that we worked with when we did shared preferences. So now what we can also do is we can open up our shared preferences class, just save some time, and we can copy this setup variables method here. Actually, let's just kind of copy everything from here, which is our on-click method, which is just a switching case, and our setup variables method. Copy that, and then we're going to go over to internal data, and we're going to, since we copied our on-click method, we're just going to delete the one that it set up for us and hit paste. And we're going to delete whatever is within our save and our load button. So now that we've copied it, we just need to call this method setup variables within our onCreate method. So it kind of initializes all of our variables there. And we also want to add the references to our edit text and our text view. So we'll do that above our class. And a text view called data results. And there we go. We pretty much have everything set up for our tutorial now. Now how we're going to work with the internal storage is we're going to create a file output stream to write our data. And then we're going to create a file input stream to read our data. So let's first, just for this tutorial, we're going to write some data. But let's first create our file output stream. So again, we want this to be a variable that we can use throughout our whole class. So we're going to say file output stream like this, and we're going to call it FOS or FOS. And within our setup variables, we're also just going to quickly create it and then close it for the most part, so we know that it exists. And we also want to have a file name, just like the last tutorial. So we're going to set up a string that's going to be our file name, and we're going to say string file name equals internal string, something like that. So what we need to do is we need to create this file output stream within our onCreate method, set it up to our file name, and set up how we want to write to it and all that good stuff. So we're going to do that within our onCreate method. Again, we have this method called setup variables, so we're just going to set it up within that method, which is going to be called within our onCreate. We're just going to set it up and then close it for the most part. So we created this file output stream. Again, output is how we write data, and we're going to set that equal to something called, or using a method called open file output. And what it takes within its parameters is the file name. Again, we just set up that variable as our string reference called internal string, and then we also want to say the way that we want to write to it for the most part. So context dot mode private, because we don't want anyone to see this file name. We want to only be able to access it within code for the most part. So we're going to use the default, mode private. It's giving us an error because when we open data, or try and write to data, load data, all that good stuff, it's not always, it's one of those sketchy things. We have to surround it with a try and a catch clause. So we can easily just hover over the error and say surround with try and catch clause. I'm going to click that, and now it's going to catch if a file has not been found for the most part, exception, and then print it to the stack trace. What we also want to do is after we create this file output stream, we just want to close it. So anytime we open it, we need to close it. So we're just going to do that quickly, fos.close. And there we go. And again, it's going to say, hey, we are trying to close it. We need to surround this with a try and catch as well. But since it's already within the try bracket, what we're going to do is we're going to say add a catch clause to the surrounding try. And as you can see, once we click that, it adds this input-output exception. So we have two things within our try bracket and two exceptions that it can catch. Again, file not found and the file exception, or input-output exception. So again, it just prints it to the stack trace, And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. We didn't write anything. We basically just created our file output stream using the reference of our file name, saying we want to write to it privately, and then we close it within our onCreate method. So in the next tutorial, I'll show you guys how to actually write to this stream, and it's going to be pretty simple for the most part. And I'll catch you then. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 99th Android tutorial for the new Boston. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is learn how to write data through these file output streams and input streams and all that nonsense. No, it's not nonsense, but all that craziness. So what we can do is basically I show you guys how to open a file through the file name here, and then we closed it within our onCreate. So that's basically saying, hey, if we don't have this file name, we're just going to set it up for the most part and close it. That's all we did in the last tutorial. Now what we're going to do is we're going to open it, write something to it, and then close it. So we have this file output stream, right? And we call it FOS. And what we're going to do is, again, we can just say open. Actually, let's set up our edit text, or our string first. So we're going to say our string, and we're going to call this the data that we're going to save. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, again, our edit text, which we called shared data. And then we're going to say get text again, and toString here. And now what we can do is we're going to write this this string basically to our file output. But we can do that a few different ways. So one way that we can do it is we can create a file, and we're going to call this file F. And again, you have to import file, and all we're going to say is new file name, or I'm sorry, new file. And within parentheses, we're going to put our reference, or our file name, which again, we created a string called file name, and that's kind of our path that we're saving to. So we're going to say file name like this. So basically, we can write to this file a few different ways. So one way is, or we can write to this output stream a few different ways. Like in the last tutorial, I'll show you guys kind of how to open it using a file name string and a kind of the context. Another way we can do this is actually using a file that we just set up. So we can say our FOS, and we're going to say new file output stream, and within parentheses we're going to give it a file name instead of a string in the context. And again, we just hit our surrounding try and catch, and that's going to open it. And then we can also do FOS.close, and we would write within here, write some data within this line. But we aren't going to actually use this method. I just wanted to kind of show you guys how you can set up a file according to a string name, and then use just a new constructor basically that's going to send it to the file output stream class. What we're going to do is we're actually going to comment out this whole line of code, and I've showed you guys, just forward slash, 2 forward slashes, and we can say saving data via file, something like that. But that only codes out one line of code. You guys probably know this if you've done Java, but we can also just say /*, and it's going to code out everything until we do something like another */. So now it's just going to comment out this block of code here, since we are actually going to use this methodology of saving data. We're going to actually kind of use the same type of setup that we did in the last tutorial. So we're going to just say FOS equals open file output, and then we give it again the file name, which is a string, comma, context dot private mode for the most part, and we're good to go. We've opened our file output stream. And now what we're going to do is we're going to write some data. So what we're going to say is FOS.write. And as you can see, it takes a byte array for this write method. So all we're going to do now is convert our string that we got from our edit text into kind of a byte array. So we're going to say our string name that we want to save, which we call data, and then we're just going to hit dot get bytes. And now all we have to do is say FOS.close. So this is basically the concept. We need to open a file output stream. We want to write some data, takes a byte array, so we're going to convert our data into that, and then we're just going to close our stream again. Now it's giving us an error because it says, you know, we have to put this in a try and a catch. So we're just going to hover over and say surround with try and catch, and we're just going to move this try to cover pretty much everything. And then we'll just add the extra exceptions that we need. So after we write, we want to close. Control-Shift format, delete that line of code. And we are pretty much done. I mean, that's basically this tutorial. Just basically we learned about this write method, a few different ways that we can save via, you know, either creating a file from a string and then using the file output stream to create that, and then also just using the open file output, which takes a string instead of a file, an actual file type variable, and we set the context to private. And then we just surround that with the try and catch, which catches the input output exceptions and prints it to the stack trace. So that's pretty much this tutorial, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. We're actually going to learn how to load the data, and we might learn about the async task class and what that's good for. So I'll catch you guys then. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your big 100th Android tutorial for the new Boston. Yeah. If you've made it this far, give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah, I don't know about that intro. I was trying to do something crazy since I'm going crazy. After making 100 tutorials, talking to the computer screen, you tend to go crazy a little bit. I don't know why Bucky isn't in an insane asylum right now, because he's done so many. But what we're going to do in this tutorial is learn how to load data with this button load. And in the next tutorial, after this one, I'm going to show you guys how to properly save and properly load data, because yeah, this is the frame. This is, I mean, nothing new for the most part. This is how you do it, with the file input and output stream. But there's a better way that you want to code. So I'll show you that in the next tutorial. But first, let's get into it. Let's start our load button here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a file input stream now. So we're going to just say file input stream, and we're going to call this FIS for file input stream, because again, file output stream is to save data, and this is to kind of read the data, load the data, all that good stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this equal to open file input instead of open file output like we did within our onCreate method. And again, just within these parentheses, we're just going to say our file name. Again, that's our string reference, kind of our path name. And again, we're going to have to surround this with a try and catch. So we're just going to say surround with try and catch right here. And within here, after we open it, we want to set up a byte array. So what we're going to do is we're going to say byte array, which is basically going to read all the data, all the bytes, and all that stuff. So we're just going to say data array, something like that. And what we're going to set this equal to is a new byte, and we're going to reference within our square brackets here is just getting the length of our file input stream. So we're going to say file input stream dot available, and basically that's going to return the amount of bytes this file input stream has. So it's just setting our array up to the same length as however many bytes is in our file input stream. So again, we get an error. We just need to add another catch clause to our surrounding try, and that's input output stream exception. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say while file input stream dot read does not and we're going to say read data array like this, and I'll explain everything as we go here, and does not equal -1. So what we're doing here, let me just talk over everything real quick. We set up a file input stream, which is referring to our file name, which is that string reference. Then we're setting up a byte array, and that's basically going to get the length of our input stream, how many bytes it is, and then what we're going to do is say while it is not equal to -1. So what it's going to do is it's going to read through our file input stream, and once it reads through everything, it's going to set this read up to -1. So once it hits -1, we know we've read everything for the most part. So that's just what this means. It's pretty standard in Java and all that stuff, but just know that this -1 just means we've read everything for the most part from our file input stream, which has the length or this many bytes for the most part, because that's what we set up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a string. So we're going to call this collected, something like this, and above our try we're just going to set up this string here. So string collected initially equals null when we hit our load button, and then we're going to set this collected string equal to a new string, and within here we're going to say our data array. And then all we have to do is close our file input stream. So what we can do is we can either say like close right here, or what we can do is kind of refer to, just to get again familiar with the try, catch, and finally. We can also say finally, referring to after everything's done. We kind of did this with our splash activity, I believe. So we're just going to say finally file input stream dot close, and it's going to give us an error because we set up our file input stream within this try. So what we're also going to do is just copy this or cut it, and then just say file input stream, and again above our try we're just going to hit paste equals null. And then we have to surround this with a try and catch as well. So we're just going to hover over and say try and catch, and it looks kind of complicated, but it's really not that bad. And that's pretty much this tutorial. Let me talk through everything that we've done. So basically we set up a string called collected. This is going to be all of our data that we read. We set up a file input stream, and both of those are null. And then once we try to get our file input stream set up, what we're going to set that up to equal is opening file input, referring to the file or referring to the string name, which is basically you can think of as a path of some sort. And then what it's going to do is it's going to read that file input stream and get how many bytes is available, and then it's going to set up a byte array, which we call data array. Then while our file input stream is reading all of those bytes for the most part, and as long as that's not equal to -1, because when it equals -1 we're done. It's going to break out of our while loop. And while that's happening, we set up the string, which was null, and now it's just going to equal a new string according to the data that it's reading for the most part. Again, our bit array. As it cycles through this while loop, it'll add to that as well. So it's going to basically be whatever is our data that we saved. And then we have these catch exceptions for file not found and file or input output exception. And then we say finally, after everything's done, just close our input stream, and we need to surround that with a try and a catch as well. So input output exception here as well. So hopefully you guys kind of understand that. It's not too difficult for the most part. And also what we can do is we can now set our text view equal to the data that we read. So all we're going to do is say our text view, which we call data results, and then dot set text, and then we're going to set it up to this collected string that we read for the most part. So now it's going to change our text view when we hit the load button. Yeah, this does look a lot more complicated for the most part than the shared preferences. And if you, again, you're just saving one variable like a string, you probably want to use shared preferences. But I just want to get you guys familiar with the input-output streams and working that way, because when we work with external data, that's kind of the concepts that we're going to have to know. So thanks again for watching, guys. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Peace.